Hey guys, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me again on the Binomo Live channel. We are now live for today, Thursday, and we'll be talking about momentum trading. How you can trade with momentum, what indicators can you use, and how do you actually make trades by reading momentum off of the market. That's going to be focused today. We're going to talk about it for a few minutes before we go to the markets, and I'll share with you some live analysis and trading for today. So if you have been using indicators when you are trading on the platform, you will see that there are all kinds of indicators. Some of these indicators help you read the momentum of the asset. So momentum is basically the speed at which prices are changing, and a strong momentum could mean that price changes will continue to move over the short term. And momentum is both ways. It could be momentum moving up, it could be momentum moving down. And when there is no momentum, you will often see that the asset is moving in a sideways trading. So basically prices are not moving or not changing very much, and that's basically a period of low momentum. So there are traders out there who not only look at candles but also look at the speed at which price is changing, and we call this momentum. A very popular tool, a very popular indicator that you probably have heard and used yourself is known as the RSI, Relative Strength Index. It's one of the most popular and most often used indicator to read momentum. So I have it on the chart on the platform right now. If you look at my screen, AUD USD, and I've got the momentum indicator RSI activated. Okay, so how do you switch on your RSI for those of you who have not yet have that on your screen? So basically you will go down to this compass and click on it, and then I'll remove it first, and then you can find here second from the top RSI. So if you pick that, that's going to be your momentum indicator, relative strength index. Click on that, and then you'll get this settings page for the RSI indicator. The overbought and the oversold level, the traditional is 70-30, but you can use 80 or 20 if you want. For the purpose of this example, I'm going to use 70 and 30. And then for the period, the default is 14. When I'm trading on lower time frames, if I'm looking at the 5-minute and 15-minute charts to trade, I will use a smaller period. I will use 9. Okay, so it's up to you. You can use 14 if that makes sense, or you can try 9 as I have set it for myself on the screen. So if you hit apply, then those settings will be on your RSI indicator. Okay, so if I zoom out, we really need to pay attention to 3 different lines here. First, you have the 70% line, which is the line at the top, and then you have the 30% line, the line at the bottom. In between those 2 lines is the 50% line. So the 50% line is basically what we call the neutral zone. That's where the sentiment or the mood of the market is neutral. It's not too positive, it's not too negative. Okay, so we use momentum to also read the sentiment of traders in the market. So whenever you have RSI moving up and moving, especially moving from 50% in the direction of 70%, okay, it's moving from 50% going up to 70%. So that's basically showing you increase in momentum, increase in trader confidence. So when it's moving up, traders are taking risk. Okay, traders are positive, traders are optimistic, and they want to take risk. Okay, and then if it hits the 70% line, that means that it has happened. The sentiment has reached optimistic levels. It has reached a very positive level. So that's what the 70% line means. Now the opposite of the 70% line is the 30% line. So this is indicator for trader not showing confidence, or traders who have a negative view of the movement. Okay, so when looking at a particular asset, so right now I'm looking at AUD USD. Whenever momentum moves from 70% confidence and positive level, moving down to 50%, we read that as traders are losing confidence. Traders are feeling negative about the asset. Okay, now that continues. If it then moves from 50% to 30%, all the way down to 30%, then we see that the sentiment or the momentum is turning even more negative. It's becoming even more pessimistic. So when it reaches the 30% line, then it shows you that pessimism is confirmed. It shows you that traders are mostly negative about the asset. Okay, and that's where prices will also move down. Now, if you look at the chart right here, there is something noticeable about momentum. Number one, momentum doesn't stay above 70% line for very long. If it touches that line and maybe stays above it for a while, it tends to not stay there and starts to come back down. Okay, and for the most part, you will see that the RSI is staying in the middle between these two lines. Okay, so that's your first signal of how to trade with momentum. Whenever momentum reaches a high of 70%, it tends not to stay there, so you got to be ready to make the opposite trade. And then whenever momentum goes down to 30% line, it's the extreme, and RSI or momentum tends not to stay there, and it will reverse direction after a while. So be prepared for that. Okay, traders always watch the overbought condition. Whenever the RSI goes above the 70% line, we call the situation overbought. The sentiment is too optimistic. And then whenever momentum or RSI goes below the 30% line, we say that the situation is oversold and that traders are too negative, too pessimistic. And when it's too negative, it tends to change and reverse direction. And look at this. If you look at the asset, whoops, okay. 1 second, let me just close that. Okay. So whenever the asset moves, RSI moves to 30% line, it will not stay there and starts to reverse direction. Okay, so that's what's happening here in AUD USD. Now, before we go and analyze that further, I just want to say that trading momentum is like riding a wave. And when you get a big wave, that's when the RSI is really high or really low, and it tends not to stay forever. You don't see big waves in the ocean or at the beach staying high for very long. It'll happen, but it won't be for long. It'll be just for a short while. So similarly with momentum, similarly with RSI, that's what tends to happen when RSI goes below 30% or above 70%. Remember that. And then for the most part, it will stay neutral. You get small waves, and prices will stay in the 50% line, in the 40% line, or in the 60% line, and it'll be somewhere there. So your job basically as a trader is to wait for it to move in a particular direction, and if it crosses those important lines, the overbought line at the 70% or the oversold line at the 30%, that's when things become interesting, because what will come next is it will reverse direction, and you could probably find a profitable trade with that movement. Okay, and let me see. Now, are there other indicators for reading momentum? There are. There's a few. Two indicators that I would like to mention, and I will show you one of them. The two other indicators besides RSI is MACD. Okay, MACD is also pretty popular. It's a lot of lines put together on a chart. And the MACD is basically a combination of moving average as well as the difference between the moving average lines. And I will show that on the platform in just a bit. So the MACD is basically, some people use it as trend confirmation. They will look at RSI, find out what the reading is, whether traders are positive or negative, and then they will use the MACD to confirm the RSI. You can also do that. I will show you how. And then the second, the second other indicator is stochastics. Okay, so stochastics is a bit simpler to use, 0 to 100, but in terms of usefulness, in terms of really giving you information, I would tend to be a bit careful about stochastic, because it keeps moving. That's the thing, and because of that, I think the RSI and the MACD is more useful. So let's look at the MACD, and I have it here with my asset Euro USD. I've switched on the MACD. There you go. So you got the histogram. When prices are moving up, the histograms will be above the line. There's a zero line here. And then whenever prices are moving down or showing weakness, then you see the histogram appearing below the zero line. Okay. And then of course, when the movement, the price movement is a huge price movement, then you get a huge histogram appearing on the MACD, like you see right here. There's a big push down. This is because of the news. We have the US PMI news coming in stronger than expected today. We also had the I think existing home sales that also came out today. So PMI was stronger than expected. So that is creating the sentiment of a stronger dollar. And then existing home sales was under or below expectations, did not meet the forecast. So that is basically saying weaker dollar scenario. But between the two, I think PMI is dominating the news right now. As you can see, Euro USD is moving down. That means US dollar is relatively stronger. Okay, same pattern we are seeing at AUD USD. It is moving down in similar fashion with Euro USD. That tells us that dollar is relatively stronger, and PMI was one of the main contributors for that move, which just happened about 2 hours ago. Now, coming back to the MACD, the way I use the MACD and the way you could probably consider using it as well is I read the peaks. So if you look at the lines right here, there is a fast line, which is the yellow line, and then there is a slow line, which is the red line down here. So whenever the fast line crosses the red line, that is a potential move. It's like how we're reading moving average. Whenever the fast line crosses a slow line, that's a move in a particular direction, and that move is significant because it's crossing the fast moving average line, is crossing the slow moving average line. So that's something that you can read and use. And it happens everywhere. Look at this. This is the fast line crossing the slow line from up, from a higher position, moving down to lower position, and that corresponds to this downward movement right here. Okay, so maybe you will be able to catch 2 or 3 candles with this. I tend not to use these crosses on the MACD. It's just telling me information. But if I need to rely on crosses, I will use my own moving averages on the chart, as I have discussed about it in yesterday's live stream. You can go back and watch that one. So so how it is useful, I mentioned peaks. So the peaks in MACD, which is, it could be the slow line or it could be the fast line, that's basically showing the ceiling of momentum. Okay, how positive traders can be about a particular asset. There is a peak, and that peak is the MACD peak. So if you see that there is a peak right here, which is basically the price peak right here, the asset may continue to go up, but in terms of momentum, it is not as strong as this peak right here. Look at this peak, it's not so strong. So the price movement from here to here is bigger. See, this is much bigger move from here to here. Okay, that's a bigger move compared to from here to here. Okay, which is why the peak in the MACD is smaller or shorter, not as tall as the previous peak. So this peak is basically telling me the peak momentum, maximum momentum that you're going to get with Euro USD. If you get anything higher than that, then it'll be even more short term, because peaks do not stay, do not stay at peak level forever. Okay, so and then it starts to come down, and then it went up again, but again the momentum is getting shorter and shorter. So you have a peak right here, and then you have another peak right here, but this momentum peak is smaller than the previous peak, and then this peak is smaller than the two previous peaks. Okay, this is smaller than this peak, and this is smaller than this peak. So this is even smaller momentum peak. So what that means is, if this is a strong peak momentum, this is a smaller peak momentum, this is a smaller peak momentum, at some point that momentum is going to fail. And it did fail. It did fail when the news came out, and then it went in the opposite direction. Look at that, immediately. So the momentum was already slowing down. MACD showed you that. And then finally, when there was a piece of bad news that traders could use as an excuse, they sold, and look at that price movement. So now we have an interesting situation right here. After that price movement, if you missed it, it's okay. There will be other price movements. Don't worry about that. Don't feel pressured. You know, if you see a big momentum, you have to open your trade, you have to participate, you have to be in right now. No. If you do that, that is the biggest mistake you can make. Do not do FOMO, which is fear of missing out. Don't try to catch other people. Now the MACD has gone all the way down, and there's a peak down here at the bottom. This peak is a monster peak. Why do I say that? Look at that. Where is the nearest peak before that? On the downside, there is no previous peak before that. The previous one was this one. Look at this. This was huge price movement, and there is a peak at the bottom right here. This was the biggest, and then after that it went straight up, because remember, when momentum hits a peak, it tends to move in the opposite direction. So that's what happened here. You get that giant peak at the bottom, and then price move in the opposite direction. Now after that, there's no more bottom peak in terms of the MACD until you get to today. And here we are today. So what do you think is going to happen next from here? Is price going to move up, or is price going to move down? I don't know about you, but that looks to me like prices are about to move in the opposite direction after a big giant peak on the downside on the MACD. So let me see, this is 11.16. Okay, I'm going to open a trade to the upside, $10. Here we go. So I've just used the MACD to open a trade, and we'll see if that's going to give us the price movement that we expect. So I'm thinking momentum will bounce back, and that bouncing back will mean that price will move higher. It doesn't have to go all the way up. It just have to go up by a little bit so that we can close the trade and get a profit, and that will be enough. You don't have to get the biggest price movements in the world to make money in the market. You just have to get a movement that puts your trade in profit. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that, and then let's look at AUD USD. Now AUD USD, we are not using MACD, we're using the RSI. So what happens if we put MACD on AUD USD? So let's have a look at that. I'm going to activate my MACD, which is down here. I will accept the default settings for MACD, and then hit apply. Close this screen, and there you go. You got the MACD down there. Also, there's a giant peak at the bottom, which is the same thing as we saw with Euro USD. Okay, there's a peak on the downside on the MACD. So the peaks are not going to stay forever, and prices tend to reverse in the opposite direction, even for a short while. Then that's what we're expecting to see, and that's my analysis for Euro USD for today. Okay, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions on either using the MACD or either using the RSI. Basically two momentum indicators that we are discussing today to make trades. Okay, so yeah, And let me see, we have 10 minutes to go on the Euro USD trade. It's not yet currently giving me profit. Yeah, so we'll wait for that. So if we do the analysis for AUD USD, and we can do the analysis using both the MACD and the RSI, because I've activated both indicators for this particular asset. And I'm looking at what the MACD is telling me. You've got peak, bottom, lowest momentum based on the peak at the bottom of the MACD, and that peak at the bottom usually translates into higher price movement, price moving up so slightly. And then you can get the confirmation also from the RSI. As you can see, the RSI bottom much earlier somewhere here, following the price action or candle formation we see on the chart. The bottom in the RSI is here, where RSI hit 23%. After that 23% bottom in the RSI, the asset moved up, and then momentum improved slightly and became more positive. So it got out of the 30% level, it got out of the negative pessimistic zone or oversold zone of the RSI, and then stayed near 39%. Now, if things become positive for AUD USD, what tends to happen is the RSI will move away from the 39% line and move towards the 50% line, the neutral zone. We call the 50% line the neutral line or the neutral zone. So if prices move from a negative area or oversold area and move to the 50% line, that is showing improvement in momentum. Traders are becoming slightly more positive, and that will create price movement. So you got to be ready for that as well, price movement moving up. Okay, now if that price movement continues, then you will see price, or you will see rather the RSI or the momentum move from 50% move towards 70%. Now that is becoming even more positive, and you will also expect to see prices to move higher when that happens. Okay, but it's not yet happening. So there is a lot of negativity still, and it's affecting AUD USD, and it is also affecting my trade at Euro USD, because it hasn't yet reversed direction. Now I've got how many minutes left? I've got 8 minutes left, so it's got 8 minutes to change its mind, the other traders, and when they change their minds, it will move higher. Then I will probably make a profit. If not, then it means that the momentum, the negative momentum, is going to stay a little bit longer. So the trade higher, I need to do another trade later when things get a little bit more positive. But right now it's not yet happening. So you can't force the market to change because you've opened your trade. So you got to be patient and wait for it. So that's it. Yeah. So let me know if you have been using RSI, if you have been using the MACD, and what kind of results have you been getting. Do you use these two indicators in every trade that you do? I don't normally use RSI every day, but whenever I don't get a clear signal from price action, from the candles, whenever I need extra confirmation, then I will activate my RSI and read the momentum. If I get enough confirmation from moving averages, if I get enough information from price action, I tend not to open my RSI, because I don't want to be using too many indicators when I'm trading. Sort of confuses you when you get different signals coming from different indicators. It's not confirmation, of course, and therefore you shouldn't be trading if you got conflicting signals from indicators. But usually I'm okay with moving average and price action only. Of course, when I say price action, I'm talking in terms of resistance and support as well, because those two are very fundamental levels that you need to use in trading or in doing technical analysis. So yeah, it's still negative, and looks like the trade hasn't given me the move that I expect from the change in momentum. I was expecting a change in momentum because of the bottom in the RSI, so it looks like it may be a little bit longer before the momentum improves and becomes slightly more positive. I mean, the trade here is better than the trade here, obviously, because it's at an even lower momentum peak on the downside. Yep. So we're waiting for that. I think we have another 5 minutes before that trade closes and we get the results that we want to see. And of course, you can also use momentum indicators across different time frames. Let's look at one example right now. So AUD USD, I was looking at the 5 minutes. You can go back to the 15 minutes, go higher time frame, and then look at the situation there. So the situation with higher time frame, it's showing you that momentum hasn't yet peaked on the bottom or on the negative side based on the MACD. Look at that. And then if you look at the RSI, the lowest momentum is not at the oversold zone. It didn't even touch the 30% line. So it's not yet too negative, and things are actually still more positive with AUD USD, which means if the price of AUD USD is able to find support, you can very well expect the uptrend, which is right here, which has started much earlier. It might even continue. Okay, now if it doesn't continue, then the RSI will go down further and cross the 30% line. Now if the moment it crosses the 30% line, that's confirmation of negative sentiment and oversold condition. So this oversold condition is even more important than the 5 minutes, than the oversold condition you saw on the 5 minutes chart. Okay, so between two time frames, the higher time frame is always the more meaningful. The information you get from higher time frame is always more important than compared to smaller time frames. So always remember that. Okay, so smaller time frame is trying to go down. Okay, although it's up there above 30%, but it's still trying to go down. That means the negative mood in the market is still there. And then the 15 minutes RSI is also showing us that it hasn't bottomed yet. So maybe it will bottom after it crosses the oversold line in the RSI and after the MACD makes a bottom on the downside on the MACD indicator. So we've got 2 minutes to go and we're caught on the wrong side of the momentum. That's okay. Whatever you do, don't open your second trade until you make profit on the first trade. So if the first trade is not working, then don't feel rushed to open the second trade. You can even rest for the day and come back tomorrow. Don't try to win back everything in one night. That's taking too much risk, and I tend not to do that. If I make a mistake or if I make a losing trade, then that will be it. Okay, that's how you control your losses. If you make a trade and it's working for you, the first trade works for you, then you can think about the second trade and you can think about the third trade. But if things are not working for you, don't think about the second trade. Think about stopping and learning about that first trade that caused you to lose money. Okay, always apply that. Review your trades and learn from it. And yeah, so we got 1 minute before the Euro USD trade closes, and the momentum is still negative. It hasn't yet turned positive, but if it's going to turn positive, it's going to be close to where it is now, because momentum don't tend to stay at the lowest level for very long. It will then move up. Look at the previous patterns. That's how useful the previous patterns are. I will show you when things are so negative, will it stay there forever? And the previous patterns will show you that the answer is no. And therefore, you can be prepared to open the opposite trade when things are too negative, or also when things are too positive. Okay. Yeah, it's a bit unlucky on the Euro USD. That's all right. Okay, so that's our lesson for today. Trading with momentum. And we talked about two technical indicators in particular. We talked about the RSI, Relative Strength Index. We call that the momentum indicator. And we also use a second indicator that is also a momentum type indicator, which is the MACD. Okay, you can use both, or you can use just one. Between the two, if I'm gonna use one, it will be the RSI, because the RSI is simpler to use. It's more straightforward. Yeah, so I didn't get that Euro USD trade today. A bit unlucky there, but that's all right. Don't feel rushed to open a second trade, no matter how right you think you are, because right now you've got that emotion baggage. You've just lost the trade. It's gonna affect your decision making. So be safe. You can do paper trades, you can do demo trades, but you don't do real trades when you've lost money. Save your account balance. Make sure that you don't make it go down even faster. Okay, that's what you need to do as a trader. You are responsible for your account balance. Okay, so I hope you've gotten value out of it. If you did, please like and subscribe. Be sure to share this live stream with your friends by sharing the link to the live stream. I will see you in future live stream, and we'll be talking more about trading, technical indicators, psychology, and other stuff, things that will help you to become a better trader. Now, if you haven't noticed, we've got a promo code running at the description of the video below. Use the promo code to double your deposit when you make a deposit to your account. Okay, so more money for you to trade, more money for you to use and learn from your trades. Okay, so I hope that has been useful. Enjoy trading and have a great day. See you guys.